A powerful noblewoman trusted her loyal maid. She trusted her devoted husband. But everything she believed shattered in one shocking moment. A secret affair. A forbidden pregnancy. A mastermind hiding in the shadows. What happens when betrayal grows inside the very walls meant to protect you? What happens when the ones you love the most become the ones who destroy your world? Stay with this story until the very end. Because the truth buried in this mansion will stun you. And the final twist will leave your heart trembling. Before we begin, support this channel. Subscribe now. And get ready for a story you will never forget. Shocking. A noblewoman caught her maid red-handed having an affair with her 70-year-old husband, and now the maid is pregnant. The whole household is in chaos. Lady Eleanor stepped into the grand hallway. Her heels echoed against polished marble. Lavender perfume floated in the air from the fresh bouquets. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting the floor in fractured colors. Her heart felt strangely heavy. Whispers had been swirling for weeks. Strange glances. Quiet laughter behind closed doors. She followed the faint sound of hurried breathing. Her fingers brushed the cold doorknob of her husband's private chamber. A chill raced down her spine. She pushed the door open with a soft creak. The scent inside was humid and wrong. Silk sheets rumpled. A gasp. The maid, Lila, froze like a deer trapped in candlelight. Eleanor's husband stared with wild, frightened eyes. Their hands tangled. Their bodies too close. Eleanor's breath stopped in her throat. The room spun like a broken carousel. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. She tasted bitterness on her tongue. The crack of betrayal felt louder than thunder. Lila clutched her belly. Trembling. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I am with child," she confessed, voice thin as cobweb. The chandelier above flickered. Eleanor's fingers went numb. Her vision filled with jagged flashes of disbelief. Every portrait on the wall seemed to glare with judgment. A storm of rage and heartbreak collided inside her. She stepped forward, steady but shaking. The maid backed away, bumping into the bed frame. A tray of pearls crashed to the floor. Eleanor stared at her husband. His wrinkled lips opened, searching for words that never came. The walls felt too close. The air tasted like iron and dust. Thunder rumbled outside as if the sky itself objected to this betrayal. Eleanor's voice finally rose, cold and sharp as glass. She demanded the truth. And with each second of silence, her fear twisted into something darker. Something waiting to strike. Something ready to change everything from this moment on. Eleanor's demand for truth struck the chamber like a blade. The silence that followed felt alive. Lila's trembling hands pressed protectively over her swollen belly. Eleanor's husband, Lord Harrington, stared at the floor, his face pale with dread. He refused to meet his wife's eyes. Eleanor stepped forward, her breath sharp and uneven. The scent of betrayal filled the room like smoke. "Speak," she ordered, her voice low and deadly. Lord Harrington swallowed hard. His throat worked, but his voice refused to obey. A stammer. A whisper. A cowardly silence. Lila flinched as Eleanor approached her. The noblewoman looked down, noticing something strange. The maid's pregnancy seemed too far along. Too sudden. Too impossible. Her fingers twitched. Her thoughts sharpened like knives. "How long?" Eleanor asked. Lila hesitated. The maid bit her lip until it bled. 5 months, she answered, barely louder than a breath. 5 months. Eleanor's heart froze. 5 months ago, Lord Harrington had been bedridden with illness. Barely conscious for weeks. Eleanor remembered every moment of that misery. Every physician's visit. Every prayer whispered in the dark. Her husband could barely lift a spoon. Her gaze turned colder than winter stone. "You lie," Eleanor said. The windows rattled from a sudden gust of wind. Torch flames wavered. Lila burst into sobs. "I swear," the maid cried. "I swear this truth. Please. I fear for my life. I fear for his. We had no choice." The words made no sense. Eleanor stepped closer until she could see the terror swimming in the maid's eyes. "No choice," Eleanor repeated, her voice dripping with fury. Lord Harrington suddenly lurched forward. His hands shook violently. "Eleanor, please. You must listen," he said. The air around him felt thick with dread. "There are things you do not know." Eleanor's laugh was bitter and hollow. "I am very aware," she spat. "You allowed filth beneath my roof. You disgraced our marriage. You dragged shame into this home." Lord Harrington shook his head wildly. "No. It is not like that. Something far worse is happening here." Eleanor halted. Her anger paused. Her senses sharpened. The chandeliers flickered again, as if the shadows themselves were listening. Lila wiped her tears with shaking fingers. "They threatened us," she whispered. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. "Who threatened you?" Neither of them spoke. A shared fear darkened their faces. The silence stretched. The door suddenly slammed shut behind Eleanor, even though no one had touched it. A jolt of fear shot through her chest. The atmosphere turned suffocating. Lord Harrington's voice was barely human now, rough and cracking. "If we speak too loudly, they hear us." Eleanor's skin prickled. Her heart hammered. Her instincts screamed danger. She scanned the room. Portraits stared back. Curtains swayed without wind. The floorboards creaked as if something crawled beneath them. Eleanor stepped back, fighting the urge to flee. "You are speaking madness," she said. Lila shook her head violently. "No. I wish it was madness. I wish it was only sin. But it is evil. True evil." Eleanor's throat tightened. A faint sound drifted from the walls. Not a whisper. But breathing. Slow. Deliberate. Close. Lila's face drained of all color. "They are always listening," she said. Eleanor's fear transformed into icy rage. "Who?" Lila's lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes widened in terror. As if invisible fingers wrapped around her throat. As if something pressed against her voice. She gasped silently. Clawing at her own neck. Lord Harrington rushed to her side. "Stop fighting," he urged with trembling desperation. "You will make it worse." Eleanor staggered backward. Her breath shook violently. Her eyes darted toward the door. Locked. Bolted. Imprisoned with secrets. Eleanor forced herself to speak. "What is inside this house with us?" Lord Harrington turned toward her. His eyes glistened with fear and regret. "There is a society," he whispered. "They control wealth. Bloodlines. Power. They chose Lila for this child. They forced me." Eleanor stared in disbelief. A cold wave surged through her body. "You expect me to believe that?" Lord Harrington nodded frantically. "You must. They said the child will inherit everything. They said the old blood must fade. They said a new heir must rise. One that obeys them. One that belongs to them. Not to us." Eleanor felt the ground sway beneath her. Her stomach churned. Her vision dimmed around the edges. A society that decides heirs. A conspiracy breeding children of power. Under her own roof. Inside her own marriage. The room seemed to close in, suffocating her with its secrets. Eleanor grabbed the bedpost to steady herself. She stared at Lila. Tears streamed down the girl's cheeks. "I never wanted this," Lila whispered hoarsely. "They promised safety, but there is no safety. Only fear. Heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway. Slow. Rhythmic. Approaching. Lord Harrington went pale. They are here. He grabbed Eleanor's arm. You must stay silent. You must act normal. For survival. Eleanor's pulse roared in her ears. The doorknob twisted. Shadows spilled across the floor like ink. A voice slid through the crack of the opening door. Smooth. Calm. Commanding. Good evening, Lady Eleanor, the intruder said. We have much to discuss about the future of your family. Eleanor's breath hitched. The walls tightened around her. The truth she thought she knew shattered completely. The real nightmare had only just begun. Eleanor's spine stiffened as the intruder stepped fully into the chamber. A tall figure dressed in a perfectly tailored black coat. His boots too clean for travel. His posture rigid with authority. A silver emblem glinted on his chest. A serpent coiled around a crown. The symbol of silent dominion. He shut the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a death sentence. His eyes were a chilling gray. Void of warmth. Void of mercy. He inspected the room as if everything inside already belonged to him. Then his gaze settled on Eleanor. Predatory. Calm. Decisive. Lady Eleanor, he repeated, smoother this time. Your presence is most fortunate. We feared you would not discover the truth soon enough. Eleanor felt ice crawl beneath her skin. She clenched her fists to hide the trembling. What truth? She demanded. Her voice cracked only slightly. The man smiled. A thin smile. A practiced smile. A smile without humanity. That your husband has served our order for decades. His words struck like a slap. Lord Harrington flinched and lowered his head. Eleanor could not tear her eyes away from the intruder. Her heartbeat galloped wildly. What order? She said. Her voice came out sharp. Angrier than fearful now. The Sovereign Circle, he replied. A title spoken with sacred arrogance. We preserve the future of noble power through strategic lineage. His gaze flicked to Lila's pregnant form. That child is the investment that will secure your family's place and obedience. Forever. Eleanor's breath caught. Her chest tightened to the point of pain. That is not my heir, she said with venom. The man stepped closer. The silver emblem on his coat reflected the chandelier light. You are mistaken, he said. Your blood is insufficient. Your womb is barren. Your time as matriarch has passed. Eleanor staggered. The room tilted. Her ears rang. Barren. The word stabbed deeper than any betrayal. She had prayed night after night for a child. She blamed herself. She blamed fate. But never him. Never them. Her eyes snapped to her husband. His guilt hung on him like chains. You knew, she said. Her voice wavered. You allowed this. You allowed them to decide my worth. Lord Harrington's shoulders shook. I tried to protect you, he whispered. They promised it was the only way. The intruder chuckled softly. A sound filled with amusement at their suffering. Attempts were made to produce an heir previously, he said. However, the results were unsatisfactory. Eleanor froze. Her breath stopped. What results? She asked. Her voice was barely audible. The man smiled again. Several children were born from discreet arrangements. All failed to survive. Eleanor felt the floor drop beneath her. Her heart twisted in her chest. Her head spun. Failed, she repeated. The word tasted like poison. He stepped even closer. We must correct weakness at the source, he said. We ensure only the strongest bloodlines endure. Eleanor backed away until her back hit the wall. Shadows crawled around the edges of her vision. Lila sobbed quietly. Lord Harrington stared at nothing, broken. The intruder clasped his gloved hands behind his back. You will accept this future, he said. You will embrace the child and raise it under our guidance. Eleanor breathed through clenched teeth. No, she said. The man tilted his head. His expression never changed. You believe you have a choice. I assure you that you do not. He gestured toward the hallway. Eleanor's ears caught more footsteps outside. Multiple figures. The air grew heavy with the presence of unseen enforcers. You have enjoyed comfort. Safety. Status, the man continued. Our order has ensured it. Now you will repay your debt. Eleanor's mind raced. She had always sensed something strange within these walls. Closed doors. Secret meetings. Letters hidden in drawers. Her husband's late-night disappearances. She dismissed them as business. As the burdens of nobility. Foolish trust. Her chest ached with fury. The intruder observed her with curiosity. You possess fire, he said. That is useful. Eleanor glared at him with pure hatred. Fire burned brighter. Hotter. Uncontainable. Her voice came slow and deadly. I will never raise a child that comes from coercion. The man approached until he stood inches from her face. His gray eyes locked with hers. Yes, you will, he whispered. We always succeed. Families who resist vanish. Entire histories erased overnight. He leaned closer. His breath cold on her skin. You are valuable because you are loved. Because you are respected. Because your name holds influence. Without you your husband is nothing. Without you this estate is worthless. Eleanor felt her pulse throb in her temples. You will nurture the chosen heir. She held his gaze. Her fear transformed. Solidified into rage. No, she said again. Louder this time. The man blinked slowly. At dawn, he said, our advisors will arrive. Contracts will be signed. Arrangements finalized. He turned away. As if she were an object. Not a threat. He paused at the door. His voice dropped to a chilling tone. You will smile tomorrow. You will congratulate the mother. And you will welcome the future. If you fail to perform your role, we will remove you. He opened the door. 2 armed guards stood outside, faces masked. The intruder stepped through. The guards remained. Watching. Waiting. Lady Eleanor's knees buckled. She slid down the wall, breaths ragged and shallow. Lila whimpered. Lord Harrington collapsed into a chair, sobbing without sound. The guards stared forward like statues. Cold. Unliving. Eleanor pressed her palm against her heart. Her life had been stolen. Her identity stripped. Her home corrupted. But the fire inside her refused to die. Her vision sharpened. Her fury crystallized. She looked at the guards. At her husband. At the terrified maid. She whispered with a promise forged in anguish. They believe I will obey. Her eyes blazed with defiance. But I will burn their world to the ground. Outside the chamber, footsteps echoed once more. A new voice spoke through the open door. A woman's voice. Calm. Commanding. Lady Eleanor, the unseen visitor called. We have been waiting for you. Eleanor lifted her head. Her tear-streaked face hardened into resolve. She stood. Every muscle tense. Every heartbeat a battle drum. She stepped forward toward the doorway of darkness. Toward the unknown enemy. Toward the next unveiling of horrors. Because now she understood one truth. The biggest secrets were still buried. And she would uncover every single one. The woman at the door spoke again, and this time her voice carried a warmth that did not belong in this cold room. Eleanor forced herself to step toward the threshold, every footfall a small triumph over the weight crushing her chest. The visitor stepped fully into the light and Eleanor saw a face framed by silver hair, eyes sharp as winter glass, and a presence that suggested a lifetime of diplomacy. She wore a robe embroidered with discreet symbols that did not match the intruder in black, but they hinted at influence of a different kind. Her smile was small and careful, as if she measured every emotion before it left her lips. "Lady Eleanor," the woman said. "I am Madame Rowe. I represent the Council of Lineage Oversight." The name landed like a stone in Eleanor's stomach. She thought of whispered names on folded letters, of signatures disguised in ink, and of alliances sealed in whispered corridors. Madame Rowe's eyes flicked to Lila's belly with something unreadable. "Your household is in transition," she said softly. "Changes must be steered with care." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "You have no right," she said. "You speak of my home as if it were a ledger." Madame Rowe inclined her head with the faintest echo of pity. "Rights are relative to survival," she replied. "Families survive when they adapt. They wither when they resist forces larger than themselves." Eleanor's pulse thudded like a drum beneath her skin. "Who forced Lila?" she demanded. "Who declared my womb unworthy?" Madame Rowe's gaze drifted toward the window, where the garden lay quiet under a bruised sky. "Not entirely forced," she said. "Some decisions are made by those who have lived longer than any of us can remember. They choose continuity over comfort." The intruder in black moved like a shadow to stand beside Madame Rowe. He folded his hands and regarded Eleanor as if she were an interesting problem. "Resistance is a dangerous indulgence," he said. "Lady Eleanor, this is not personal. It is evolution." Eleanor felt bile rise at the word evolution. She thought of the cradle she never rocked, of whispered lullabies she had never sung, and of nights when loss visited like a thief. "How many children have they taken?" she asked. "How many names erased to write a new line?" Madame Rowe's face did not change. "A select number," she said. "Those who did not fit the criteria were removed quietly. For the good of many." The room grew smaller, the air thicker, as if the house itself pressed in to listen. Lila curled her hands into the fabric of her skirt and stared at the floor as if the planks held answers. "You promised safety," she whispered. "You promised he would be provided for." Lord Harrington sobbed with shoulders heaving, a sound Eleanor had never imagined would come from him. Shame and fear had carved fresh lines across his face. Eleanor clenched her teeth until pain bloomed behind her eyes. "You used him," she said to the intruder. "You used our marriage as a ledger line to balance your accounts." The man's gray eyes were flat. "Practicality requires sacrifice," he said. "Today your household makes that sacrifice willingly or not." Eleanor felt something inside her uncoil and become something else. It was fury and grief braided together into resolve. She had been fragile at dawn. Now she realized that fragility could be sharpened into weaponry. She would not become a passive ledger entry. She would not be catalogued and shelved. "Tell me everything," she said. "Begin with their names." Madame Rowe's lips curved into a smile that spared nothing. "You will learn the names when the contracts are signed," she said. "We are patient." A cold laugh escaped Eleanor, short and raw. "You will not have patience with me." Outside, a clock chimed the hour in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Each strike carved a notch into Eleanor's resolve. She thought of the servants who polished silver and never asked why. She thought of the gardeners who tended roses and hid letters in the soil. If there was a network of power stitched beneath polite society, then it had threads here in every room. Madame Rowe stepped forward, close enough that Eleanor could smell a faint scent of bergamot and old paper. "We can be allies," she said. "We can secure your legacy with minimal disturbance." Eleanor felt the offer like a hot blade. Acceptance would grant safety but at the cost of principle. Refusal might mean annihilation. She stared at Lila, at the life pushing against the girl's ribs, at the life that might become a pawn. "Who are you trying to save?" she asked, her voice steady now. The family name, or your own conscience. Madame Rowe's eyes were unblinking. We save history, she said. Not sentiment. Eleanor thought of history, all the framed faces with stony eyes, their mouths stitched with the secrets of generations. She thought of the stories that had been told about duty and sacrifice and the cost of greatness. Her hands unclenched. She felt the ache of it all and the brittle clarity of a plan forming like frost. If I play your game, she said slowly, I will set the terms. Madame Rowe regarded her with interest. Terms are acceptable, she conceded. But any deviation that threatens the order will be corrected. The intruder in black shifted, and the guards at the door relaxed only a fraction, like sharks circling beneath a calm surface. Eleanor's mind raced through alliances she had ignored, letters she had burned, men she had dismissed. If the council desired a facade, then facades could be engineered from the inside. Her breath came shallow and rapid. She forced herself to breathe deep, to anchor in the room with the smell of lavender and the metallic tang of fear. I will learn their names, she said. I will learn their methods. I will learn their weaknesses. Madame Rowe tilted her head as if tasting the promise. Do not mistake curiosity for courage, she warned. Courage sets you apart. It does not absolve consequences. Eleanor's eyes burned. She thought of the quiet moments before dawn when she would walk the halls and listen to the house breathe. Those walks would become reconnaissance. Those portraits would become maps. She would excavate every secret until the foundation of their power cracked. Outside in the corridor, footsteps faded and then returned as voices converged. The advisors had arrived. Their murmurs seeped beneath the door like cold wind. Eleanor straightened, feeling the first true taste of control spike through her grief. She would learn and she would fight. Her voice was a low vow that trembled only once. They will think I bow, she said. They will think I accept. They will be wrong. The door opened wider to admit a procession of measured faces and restrained smiles, each bearing the calm of those who assume dominion. Eleanor stepped forward into that doorway, shoulders squared, heart a roaring furnace, and the world narrowed to the slow burn of a plan that might save more than a name. She walked into the room of secret rulers and did not falter. She intended to speak their language and then to undo it from within. She intended to find allies in unexpected places. She intended to make the first cut and leave no one unmarked. The conversation began and the game unfolded. The house held its breath as if it knew the storm had only just begun. The room smelled of old paper, wax, and a faint hint of smoke that belonged to other people who had made bargains before her. A dozen faces glanced up as Eleanor entered, polite masks held like armor. Their eyes measured her like a specimen under a glass dome. She felt every gaze as a pinprick along her spine. Her skirts whispering over the floor sounded too loud. Madame Rowe gestured to a chair as if offering consolation. Eleanor declined the seat with a slight shake of her head. She would not be seated like a supplicant before predators. A man with thin spectacles and a ledger that smelled of iron introduced himself as Registrar Malkin. He spoke with the softness of someone who handled people like accounts. He congratulated the council on this delicate arrangement. His words were polite and barbed at once. Eleanor listened and catalogued each inflection. She let their arrogance fill the air, and she inhaled it like fuel. Outside the tall windows the garden lay under a slate sky, hedgerows dark as secrets. A raven landed on the stone balustrade and cocked its head. Eleanor watched the bird like a small omen and then turned back to the humans who believed themselves gods. Registrar Malkin unfurled a vellum contract with a flourish. Ink glistened like dark veins across the paper. He explained the terms in a voice that treated lives like clauses. The child would be raised under council guardianship. The estate would yield certain revenues to the circle. The Harrington lineage would continue, cleansed and strengthened. Eleanor kept her face still. Every clause they offered carried chains. Madame Rowe placed a hand over the ledgers as if blessing them. She smiled at Eleanor the way a predator smiles at prey that is still useful. Sign and stability returns, she said. Refuse and history may forget you entirely. Eleanor's pulse thudded painfully in her throat. She thought of signatures she had admired on charity checks, the graceful curl of her own name. She imagined that same flourish becoming a noose. "Tell me one true thing," she said quietly. "Tell me how the council chooses a mother. Tell me why they chose Lila." Registrar Malkin cleared his throat. "The selection rests upon many factors," he said blandly. "Fertility, temperament, useful connections, malleability." Lila flinched as the word landed like a verdict. Eleanor walked closer to the maid and saw a bruise at the base of Lila's throat, pale and angry. Blood had not yet surfaced to stain a confession, but the mark was obvious to anyone who knew to look. Lila's hands trembled as she folded them in her lap. "You will not hurt her," Eleanor hissed. Her voice carried nowhere. The men around the table smiled with helpless sympathy. A younger advisor with oily hair produced a small velvet box and set it down as if it were the heart of the matter. Inside lay a pin shaped in the same serpent and crown. "The insignia binds obligations," he said. "Acceptance is rewarded with protection. Refusal is punished." Eleanor thought of protection like a gilded cage. She imagined the child stepping into a life pre-built by hands that had never known tenderness. A sudden sound at her shoulder made her start. A folded sheet of parchment lay where her gloved hand had brushed a silver tray. She had not seen it until now. Her fingers closed on the paper and she felt the edges like a secret waiting to be freed. She unfolded it with slow, deliberate care. The handwriting was a cramped, slanted script she did not recognize. It spoke in riddles and names and dates like the map of an underground river. Eleanor read a single line and then another. There were mentions of safe houses, names of servants who had vanished quietly, a ledger of births that did not match any public register. At the bottom, written in a hurried hand, were 3 words she felt like a blade: "Find the clock." Her skin prickled. The sound of the clock in the hall chimed again, louder now, as if answering the command. Eleanor swallowed hard and folded the note. She did not look up. Her mouth stayed hollow and silent to buy time. She had learned in the silence of cold nights how to hide the stirrings of rebellion. She had learned how to smile with a mouth full of stones. Madame Rowe noticed her stillness and leaned in as if offering counsel and danger. "You will not play games with us," she murmured. "Cooperation is sensible." Eleanor nodded ever so slightly. She would play. She would learn. She would find the clock. Registrar Malkin's pen hovered above the vellum like a viper ready to strike. "Sign when you are ready," he said. Eleanor let her palm slide over the ink as if tasting it. There was no instant decision. Every second widened the gulf between choice and consequence. Outside, the sky thinned to a colder gray and the first fat drops of rain began to fall. They pattered on the panes like a warning and a benediction at once. A young servant entered with a tray and dropped a folded napkin at the registrar's feet, abruptly and clumsily. His hands trembled as if with cold or fear. Registrar Malkin's lips twitched in annoyance. "Careless," he said. The servant bowed and fled. Eleanor kept her eyes on the napkin for a beat and then reached for it when the council's attention drifted. Inside, tucked like a confession, was a scrap of torn map with a circled X labeled kitchen clock tower. Her breath caught and then steadied like a controlled weapon. She folded the scraps into her glove and slid them into a pocket no one noticed. Her plan began to take shape in quiet motions. She would sign the contract enough to placate them. She would smile for the cameras and offer the hospitality they demanded. All the while she would move in the seams and shadows, gathering the names the ledger had promised. She would find the clock tower and whatever secrets it guarded. She would keep Lila alive and the child safe from being turned into a herald of other people's ambitions. Her fingers curled until her knuckles showed white beneath the lace of her glove. Tonight she would not sleep. Tonight she would walk the house and listen to its breath and read its bones. The council would leave in the morning believing they had secured obedience. They would not know that a different revolution had already begun. Steps padded softly in the corridor. A voice from the doorway said, friendly and casual. "Lady Eleanor, the gardeners have been summoned to the east wall." They await your instructions. Eleanor turned her head slowly. She smiled in a way that was both cold and calculated. Assemble them, she said. Tell them to bring lanterns and shovels. The messenger inclined his head and scurried away. No one in the room understood the weight of that request. No one but Eleanor knew the language of the soil and the secrets buried beneath it. She would unearth whatever this council had hidden. She would follow the clock. She would not be a ledger entry. She would not be forgotten. The council took up their pens again. The ink on the vellum waited for her signature like a patient executioner. Eleanor crossed the room with slow, measured steps and allowed her name to be placed like bait upon the page. Her hand trembled as she made the final flourish, but the tremor was a practiced lie. When her finger lifted from the parchment, she stared at the black trail of ink as if it were a thin scar. The first lock in a chain was set. She had entered into their game and they believed her compliant. They could not see that beneath her compliance, a map had been drawn, clues collected, and alliances imagined. Night fell fully then and the rain grew harder, drumming on the glass in a frantic tattoo. Eleanor slipped the note and the scrap of map into her pocket. She breathed in the scent of wax and old paper, and then she breathed out a plan that tasted of iron and will. She would meet the clock at midnight. She would begin to unmake their certainty. She would gather allies among the invisible hands that kept the estate running. She would learn every name in the ledger and every fate it had claimed. The council conversed, unaware. Eleanor stood at the center of the room, surrounded by men and women who thought they had bought her silence. She allowed the sting of tears to warm her face for a moment and then wiped them away. There was no room for spectacle now. There was only the slow, patient work of undoing centuries of secret bargains. She would not fail. She would not allow the house to swallow this child into its ledger. Midnight approached and the clock in the hall prepared to speak. Eleanor moved to the window and placed a hand on the cold glass. She watched the rain blur the garden into a smear of bones and green. Below, the servants moved like ghosts, unaware of the new war that had taken root above them. She whispered a name into the dark that she had not said aloud for years. It was the name of a man she had once trusted to be nothing more than a neighbor. She had been wrong about everything. She had been wrong in the small ways and in the large ones. Now she would be right about the things that mattered. The wind urged at the shutters like a knuckle at a locked door. Eleanor turned away from the window and toward the ledger on the table. A new chapter was beginning and she would write it in her own hand. She walked into the hush of the council room with resolve and a secret map hidden near her heart, and the house waited, listening for the sound of the clock. Eleanor stood in the heart of the storm. Wind slammed against the windows like fists of a furious sky. Her husband sat slumped on the edge of the bed. His face looked gray. Defeated. Lila held her stomach. Her breath came in quick shivers. Fear pulsed in the air like a living thing. Eleanor stepped closer. The floor felt as if it swayed under her feet. Her voice dropped to a whisper sharp enough to cut. Who planned this betrayal? Lila shook her head with frantic denial. Tears soaked her cheeks. It was love, she pleaded. It was a mistake. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She saw truth and lies fighting in the maid's trembling lips. Then she saw something else. A new shadow in the corner. A reflection in the mirror that did not belong. The butler. Mr. Hawthorne. Watching. Silent. Eyes cold like a winter grave. He stepped forward with calculated calm. His gloved hands folded behind his back. I advised the young maid, he said. I guided her. Eleanor's heartbeat roared in her ears. Why, she demanded. Mr. Hawthorne smiled. A slow and chilling curve of lips. Because the estate must not fall into ruin, he said. Your husband refuses to produce an heir. The lineage must continue. Eleanor's chest burned with fury. So you offered my husband a girl less than half his age, she said. You played with their lives. I preserved the future, he replied. Thunder cracked overhead. The chandelier trembled. Eleanor looked at Lila. Then at her husband. Two broken souls trapped by a scheme larger than lust. Her anger turned like a wheel grinding sorrow into iron. "You thought I would accept this," she said. "You thought I would bow." Mr. Hawthorne's calm did not falter. "You have no choice," he said. "You have no child." Eleanor lifted her chin. "But I have power." Her words carried lightning. She ordered guards to enter. Their boots thundered across the floor. Steel clanked. Mr. Hawthorne's confidence faltered at last. "You will regret this," he warned. Eleanor's eyes blazed. "No. The one who will regret is you." The guards seized him. The butler's mask crumbled. Rage and fear twisted his face. He was dragged away. His protests echoed down the corridor. The silence that followed felt fragile. Eleanor faced her husband. "I will never forget this hurt," she said. Her voice softened. "But I will choose what happens next." Her husband's eyes glistened with shame. "I failed you," he whispered. She nodded once. She turned to Lila. The maid stepped forward. Her entire body shook. "I never wanted to destroy you," she said. "I am sorry." Eleanor studied her. This young woman carried innocence and guilt at the same time. She carried a future that Eleanor never had. A soft ache formed in Eleanor's heart. Eleanor reached out. Placed a gentle hand on the maid's cheek. "Your child will never suffer for the sins of adults," she said. Lila gasped with relief. Her knees buckled. She cried until she could not breathe. Eleanor pulled her close. Warm. Protective. The storm outside calmed. Light returned to the stained glass, casting soft colors upon them like a blessing. Eleanor guided Lila to a chair. She stood tall before the fireplace. Her voice filled the room like a promise. "The next heir to this house will be protected," she said. "And I will be the one to ensure it." A new chapter began at that very moment. Not forged in betrayal, but in strength. In justice. In mercy. Eleanor had stepped from heartbreak into authority. She became the heartbeat of the estate. The true keeper of its future. And those who dared to challenge her would never forget what she survived. Or what she became. The noblewoman whose spirit refused to break. The noblewoman who turned chaos into destiny. The noblewoman who would lead with a fire that nothing could extinguish. Thank you for listening to this story. If this tale moved your heart, if the suspense gripped your breath, please support the storytellers who work hard to bring you more gripping stories like this one. Subscribe to the channel now. Show your love. Join the family for more thrilling and emotional stories every day.